Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a video and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Today, I'm delighted and privileged to welcome not just a good friend, but a very senior professional turned entrepreneur, Mr. Anish Bafna. Anish, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh. Really pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Anish is currently the CEO and managing director of the Healthium Group. He was earlier the president of Baxter International for Japan. So Anish, tell me, what would you say are three key milestones in your life or your career?
Sure. So Ashutosh, I would say that, all are related to moving into uncharted territories. When I started my career, the HR head had told me, don't worry about designations, remuneration, or perks. Just follow learning and the rest will follow. And that sort of learning has stuck with me forever.
Right.
I guess from a milestone perspective, the first milestone was, at the beginning of my career, moving to an unknown country like Vietnam, building businesses from scratch there. That opened, me up to being consistently mobile. I think mobility is a very important factor in any professional journey, because you keep on learning new things when you travel. Not worry about what could go wrong. I moved into a completely uncharted territory.
Yeah.
So the only way was to go up. Understand different cultures and beliefs and their impact on daily lives. And I guess, that also helped you to build networks around the globe and build in me a spirit of adventure. So I think moving out was the first milestone that really sort of, enhanced my learning opportunities. The second was, to move back to India. When my boss offered me the job of heading Baxter in India, Sanjay was his name. I was aghast, because I would be moving to India, managing a team of 1,000 people from being in Malaysia, where I was handling just a 45 people team. I said yes to the job immediately because it was fascinating.
Correct.
But what it gave me was an opportunity to understand India, connect back to the family. It gave me the courage that size is irrelevant. And the transformation of the Indian business that we did will always remain the high point of my career. Right? I guess more importantly, I discovered that the talent pool of India was fantastic. It had unmatched caliber, and given the right direction, it could prosper anywhere in the world. The third was to the movement of from Japan to India. I've been in Japan for a short time, but it was very memorable because I found one of the most passionate people on earth there with very high levels of integrity. And the decision to take on what I'm doing now was a very difficult decision at that point in time. Right? On one side, there was the opportunity of creating self-sufficiency to the extent possible in the Indian medtech industry in an entrepreneurial mode. And the other, leaving a company that was second nature to me and a team that had trusted me with their professional lives. So I guess, not having spent enough time in Japan will be possibly the only regret I'll harbor. But then there's the opportunity to create a scaled medtech company out of India, which would not have come every day. And I hope that this becomes the third largest milestone of my career.
Fantastic. So Anish, let's talk about the Healthium Group. You just mentioned to me that you are the largest manufacturer of, I think, surgical needles in the world. But tell me about your journey from a professional to Healthium.
So Healthium is a very interesting, sort of opportunity. We are a group of 3 companies with 5 manufacturing plants, all based out of India. We've got two of our companies based in India and one based out of the UK. And I found this, this opportunity interesting because there is no large company of medtech company of scale out here in India. Pretty much 80 to 85% of the market is dominated by imports, both from multinationals and from other smaller players across the globe. And, for a country like us, with these kind of skills that we have in engineering, polymers, plastics, chemical, pharmaceutical, etc., I think it's a pity that, we haven't really been able to create a play the way pharma did many years back. So I think that was sort of, what interested me in coming out here and creating, the Healthium Group. And it has been very interesting because, as we speak, we are like I said, the largest manufacturer of suture needles in the world, but we are also the largest manufacturer of sutures in India. We've come up with a brand new division on arthroscopy, where we are the largest manufacturers of knee implants and shoulder implants in the country.
Wow.
We've been able to consolidate all the 3 businesses and bring them under this roof, which has given us USFDA approvals, ISO approvals, CE markings. But what was most interesting was that we were able to take a relatively sort of complacent play into being, a high IP oriented play. So currently we have about 55 patents that were all, granted to us over a period of last 2.5 years. And over a period of time, we think that, with what we have right now, we can really scale it up to be a contributor not only to the Indian medtech space, but be a global player and supply to the rest of the world.
Amazing. And when I was reading about I was fascinated by your vision to create access to precision medtech for every patient globally.
Right.
Tell me, what have been some of your challenges as you have set out to achieve this vision?
Yeah, I think the vision was a relatively simpler, simpler to make, primarily because we were already in one of every 6 surgeries globally. And my view was that, why can we not be in every surgery globally and, take the product to places where a lot of multinationals would not want to go to because of various reasons, right? So coming here, it has definitely been a transformational journey for us. The foray of bringing the 3 companies together was an exercise in creating a common vision, culture, and values that inspired the teams, to work collaboratively. Remember, there were 3 different cultures that had to be sort of brought together. So the organizational design and structure at Healthium went through a phenomenal transformation, and we employed diverse talent from across the globe, right? So, I was lucky that we were able to attract very high caliber talent. We got Vishal Maheshwari, our CFO, who was the CFO for Abbott in India. Konkan, our CHRO, came from Jubilant and Tally's background. Our head of businesses are ex-Diageo and Danaher. Our head of clinical affairs is ex-Baxter. Our head of strategic initiatives is ex-Goldman Sachs and UBS. We were able to create a great team that came together. And I guess that was where I spent most of my time initially, because I didn't want to compromise on the quality of talent that we have. Correct. And then the focus was around processes, right? So, when you take 3 companies together, you have to really align all the processes together. So as a part of the digital transformation, we put in SAP HANA, Concur for expenses, C4C, a Salesforce excellence tool, reverse auction for our purchases, account receivable automation, IQVIA for visibility on secondary data, a tool for international freight management, Microsoft Teams, etc. And that sort of process, took a lot of change management because, people were not used to working with these kind of processes. Excel used to dominate pretty much everything that happened in the organization.
Correct.
Then the third was to invest in R&D because we had great products, but then you needed a continuous slew of new products that you kept on launching over a period of time. So we had to build in R&D and new product development capabilities. In 2019, we got a USFDA recertification. And again, I'm proud to say that we are one of the only USFDA accredited plant in this part of the world.
Wow.
Right. And with the R&D engine moving, the idea is to move us up the value chain and create products that can be patented, that have an IP, that are significantly differentiated from other players globally. And that in itself has been an exercise. So the example I gave earlier of creating an arthroscopy range for knee and shoulder interventions is called Ceronics. And now we have one of the largest range of products in the country. We decided that we won't copy, any other player. We will create our own design, our own IP. And that range alone has given us about 52, patents. So, we feel that, this journey has just started for us. It's a constant process of evolution. But the last 2.5 years of work that we put in really played out very well during COVID, because in COVID, while surgeries were down 30 to 35%, we were actually able to grow both our top line and the bottom line by a healthy number. And that sort of gives us the confidence that, all this focus around people, process, and plan should play out well in years to come.
So, what you just told me about the incredible team you have built and all the work that you're doing with different kinds of software which are improving efficiencies. But tell me, how is technology, and I'm talking now here, both manufacturing technology, people technology, and, you said it's 52 odd patents you've got. How is technology changing healthcare, or medtech devices?
I guess, one of the central pivots has been COVID. And if you look at healthcare, other than the technology that goes into building products or automation in the plants, we're still relatively far behind a lot of other industries.
Mm.
But I guess COVID has been a game changer in the sort that the healthcare industry has started embracing the growth of digital outreach and
Mm.
delivery through data analytics, telemedicine, e-pharmacy. You have online and video
Mm.
consultations that have become a norm now.
Correct.
Tele-assessments, e-medicine have come to play,
Mm.
during the lockdown and continue to rise.
Mm.
Patients are more comfortable talking to patients on phone rather than going and meeting them out there.
Mm.
Plus social distancing and quarantine norms have also made it difficult for them to
Mhm.
get that kind of access, right? And I guess this is a game changer for a country like India, where you have a big paucity of infrastructure, healthcare infrastructure, right? Whether it be hospitals, number of beds, number of doctors, number of nurses. And that should play out beautifully, for countries like us, which are sort of underpenetrated on healthcare
Mm.
over a period of time, right? So while the immediate and the now is more focused on COVID-19,
Mm.
the long term will be more about redrawing the landscape and to align to the new reality, strengthening preventive care, and
Mm.
setting up infrastructure for a much more robust healthcare setup.
And which countries would you say are, your real competitors, and what is your big advantage?
So from a provider perspective, of medtech products,
Mhm.
China has of course been at the forefront. And one of the reasons China has done so well is also because it's a captive market.
Mhm.
Right? The size of the industry as compared to India is about 13 times,
Wow.
which is significantly large, and it gives a lot of headroom for the local players to
Mm.
keep on funding their R&D initiatives, to keep on funding their international forays,
Mhm.
to make mergers and acquisitions internationally, right? So China definitely is one of the largest player in the market for that. But then you also have some smaller countries like Turkey,
Mm.
where the entrepreneurial spirit has sort of helped them create some nice niche, but and small,
Mm.
but very good plays that are there in the marketplace. Europe definitely has a lot of small entities
Mm.
that have prospered over a period of time. Now most of these are family run, and
Correct.
they haven't grown internationally. But when you look at Europe and when you look at some of the countries they're present in,
Mm.
they have been able to bring out great products. At the forefront, it will always be the US, right? Because of the very large
Mm.
market,
Mm.
as well as most of the large companies emanating out of the US. So these, I guess, are the critical players in the medtech front.
So I just want to, ask you a further question on your comment that China is 13 times India. I thought, two countries, equivalent populations, healthcare needs very similar, and your products are probably going to every possible surgery,
Right.
right? Why is the difference so vast? I mean, are people using other kinds of products in India?
So just to give you, sort of a ballpark number,
Mm.
India needs about 3,500 surgeries per 100,000 population,
Okay.
right? Currently, we do about 1,400.
Okay.
So the penetration is only at about 33-34% at this point in time of
Mm.
surgical interventions. But as with rapid urbanization, with larger number of hospitals coming by, with more penetration of insurance,
Mhm.
I guess that equation, and plus when the sort of economy moves from a 2,000 per capita to a 4,000 per capita, a lot of these things will change, right? That
Mhm.
will give us scale, and scale will help us to invest more on some of those critical areas where China has been ahead of us.
Okay. Okay. And there must be a lot of small scale players in India as well.
So India has a lot of small scale players.
Mm.
Unfortunately, on the medtech front, the large players, you can count them on your fingertips.
Mm.
And I guess the other area where we've suffered is because of the size of the market, we've really not been able to attract a lot of foreign players
Mm.
with investments in manufacturing.
I see.
So what happens is that if you're manufacturing in India, then you start looking at exporting, and that gives rise to a lot of ancillary units.
Mm.
So today, for some of the products that I would want to manufacture in India, I find it difficult because it needs 200 to 300 different parts,
Mm.
and I don't have ancillary suppliers out here in India.
Mm.
But I guess in the next 5 to 10 years, this will change.
They will
And
probably
the
develop
AI
that.
scheme coming in with healthcare being now at the forefront of the government interest also, that should change over a period of time.
Very interesting. So let me move on and ask you. I mean, you've run so many businesses, and it's very interesting. You said, when they moved you from a 45 team to a 1,000-member team, and then you built large teams. What would you say, Anish, is your leadership style?
So, one is always focus on the underlying process rather than obsessing about the eventual outcome. And I don't like the idea of shortcuts.
Mhm.
And if process is right, then eventually the outcomes will be better than anticipated.
Correct.
I think the problem is that people get very sort of edgy very early, and that is why some shortcuts are made, which sort of derail the growth of the company or the industry.
Mm.
I guess the other thing is that there is nothing more deceptive than the obvious fact,
Mm.
right? I see my role as more of challenging the status quo. My role as a leader is that of being a challenger in chief,
Mhm.
and I have to prevent the organization from falling into any kind of a complacent zone.
Mm.
That is a very important part of the job that I do, and I need to make sure that people don't sort of narrow themselves down. Yes, I have to say yoga,
Mm.
right? The third job as a leader, I think, which is very important, is to figure out what not to do.
Okay.
Yeah, nothing is more paralyzing than the idea of limitless possibilities. We can do this, we can do that, we can do everything. My belief is less is more, and limitation is liberating, right? So be the best at what you do, but don't try to be everything to everybody, because you can't. That
Very,
doesn't really happen, right?
very, very well said.
Consistency in leadership is very important. Sorry, and
Go ahead, please.
consistency constantly beats hot and cold.
Mm.
So I would rather be sustainable, build sustainable growth engines
Mm.
rather than having a lot of ups and downs.
Mm.
And ultimately, as cliched as it may sound, it all boils down to people, right?
Correct.
Hire the best people, don't compromise there at all,
Correct.
and just make sure that you hire people who are significantly better than you.
Mm.
That always plays out.
Fascinating. I've often argued with people that in the old days there used to be something that you would call superstar CEOs.
Right.
And then you can name many of them across the whole world. But I think that generation of superstars seems to have disappeared now.
Yeah.
With
And
solid,
sometimes-
grounded people like you. Who are,
Sometimes it leaves hubris behind also, right? I mean, after Jack Welch, the value destruction that happened at G.
Yeah.
And it may or may not be attributable to a superstar leader. But the fact of the matter is that, once a person becomes larger than the organization, then I get something's got to give.
Absolutely. So my next question, when I was reading about you, you mentioned that you have a very deep devotion for India.
Right.
I want to understand what motivates this deep devotion.
So for me, my grandfather on my mother's side was a freedom fighter. And right from my childhood, my siblings and I were always brought up on stories around India's glory, the path to freedom, and what all went into getting us to where we were. And the bedtime stories are all related to India's independence movement.
Correct.
And that sort of has stayed with all of us, right? So I guess and once you go outside of India and when you see a lot of progress that has happened elsewhere, you feel that with the kind of talent with the kind of resources you have, why would you not regain the glory of the past? Now, the glory would have been 400 years back, but that doesn't mean that as a country we should sort of just let that pass by and not take on the opportunity, right? And you've seen countries like China that have really come back. Before 1979, they were significantly behind us, and look at where they are now, right? So to me, the fact of the matter is that as a country, we have got tremendous amount of potential, great resources, one of the best people. And, we need to give everything that we have to create an India for the next generation, which has to be significantly better than what we were brought up in, right? I mean, it has changed a lot in the last 20 years for sure, but I think we've got a long way to cover there. Right?
Oh, I agree with you. I mean, I think this feeling of national pride needs to come in a much, much stronger way in everybody now. And I think it's happening.
Absolutely.
So Anish, let me move to the last segment of our conversation, with some questions for you personally. What would you say are some of your core values?
So I think, Ashutosh, integrity tops everything. Integrity is zero tolerance for me. And, I guess that's where I've seen that countries that have demonstrated high levels of integrity have also been able to buck the growth curve and really do phenomenally well for themselves, right? So work ethics and ethics of integrity, or the culture of integrity across any organization or any human being, is very, very important. And compliance cannot be taught, right? I mean, we grow with compliance, so we know what is good and bad. And that's why it's important that we stick to that That is the only way how we as a people will be able to sort of grow. The other is to be in an egoless state. In leadership, you have to take decision making all the times.
Correct.
And if you don't exhibit flexibility, now a lot of people think that because I'm a leader, what I've said has to be cast in stone. And though I may understand that I took a wrong decision, I have to stick to it. To me, when a situation changes, you have to change your stance, and you cannot allow ego to dictate that you are heading, towards hubris. Right? So integrity and egoless state, I think personally, I hold them very core to my being and my evolutionary state. Of course, you keep on evolving on all different dimensions.
Right.
But these are something I hold very close to, even with the teams that I hire.
Very interesting. And again, as you look back at life as very successful professional, led large teams, building a very successful entrepreneurial journey, from where you stand today, what does success mean to Anish?
I guess success is more a peace of mind, the satisfaction that you put in your best efforts to be the best that you were capable of being, right? And I've always seen that if you keep the mental mode of I cannot do this aside, you're more or less able to manage things that you want, right? And somewhere someone, and I think this was also quoted in one of the Hindi movies, that if you really want something, then the entire universe will conspire to make it happen.
Correct.
If you really want something, it will happen. All you need to do is make sure that you're completely devoted to that particular cause. And failure is a part of life. Be happy with failures, because that's the only way to learn. There will be good days and there will be bad days. We cannot let failures define us.
So this your last comment gives me an interesting segue to my next question, which is on failure. I've just got a new book that's come out 2 weeks ago on failure. I've often said parents in South Asia don't teach children it's okay to fail. We're always told first out, head of the line, etc., etc. Yet we fail.
Yeah.
My question to you, Anish, is what have been some of your learnings from some of your mistakes?
I think the biggest learning has been that it is not our failures that define us as much as how we respond to them, right? Because failing fast is a credo. That's what I've been following, and it has worked beautifully for me, because you will fail, and you have to encourage a culture of failure in the organization. For me, mediocre success doesn't excite me as much as somebody coming and saying that, oh, I failed, and this is what I've learned out of the process, and this is how we can do things differently, right? But for me, most of my failures I would attribute to decision making. Either it has been acting in haste or taking too long to decide.
Okay.
Right. So that has been, sort of one of the biggest learnings, that, you can't wait forever to decide. Neither can you just start taking decisions on the spot. You've got to have your mental models in place. And that is why, your reading, your interactions, you have to keep on creating mental models in your mind that sort of helps you to triangulate different points of data that allow you to take decision. The other one is expecting that what will happen is not the same as what should happen. So sometimes we say that just because we are doing this is going to happen. Right? It doesn't happen that way.
Correct.
Life happens when you're busy making plans.
Absolutely.
And one has to be ready to deal with different kind of circumstances and not get derailed just because things didn't happen the way they were supposed to be. And one more has been that you don't get stuck to your beliefs. Beliefs are basically hypotheses that need to be tested, and they shouldn't be stuck to you. You have to be in an evolutionary state, because if you think that this is the only way something can happen, or this is the only way why something happens, you will miss the boat completely.
Fantastic. And Anish, my last question to you, and this is for the thousands of people who will listen to all your comments. What would your advice be to a young individual who's starting off on their journey as an entrepreneur?
I guess it starts with the journey, right? The hardest part is starting. Once you get that out of the way, the path automatically getting created, right? So you have to start. I mean, if there's something that you really are passionate about, there's something that you want to do, then you have to start heading into that direction. Just thinking about it is not going to take you anywhere. Right? I guess the second is that dreams don't magically unfold just because you want them to. You have to work towards making them happen. And, there will be ups and downs. That's a part of life. You will have to take everything in your stride and keep on moving. Giving up is not really an option. Once you're heading in the direction that you want to and you're passionate about it, then patience is a larger virtue than anything else.
Amazing.
Most of the people give it, and most of the races are lost at the 95th percentile mark because, the last 5% is when you need to conserve all your energy and run at your fastest. And by the time people have burned themselves out, right?
Right.
And I guess the last piece of advice I'll leave them with is don't rationalize, try to be rational. Most of the time we end up spending time being rationalizing, this didn't happen because of this, or if this would have happened, that would have happened, right? This is all rationalization. Let's be rational, let's look at practical elements and then keep on developing ourselves.
Fabulous. Anish, thank you so much. I really loved our conversation from the very first word that you said, that how important mobility is for an individual when they're starting off on their career, to what you said recently about an egoless state for a leader. I mean, it's a very difficult state for leaders to reach, but it looks like you have reached there. Thank you again so much for this amazing conversation.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh, for having me here. And it was wonderful talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.